Right guys, we've got a fun video this time as we round off the year 2025. So there's been this sheet going around recently. It's created by Bite Size, another content creator, and it's just a fun little survey that each creator can do, giving your reasonings for like the most underrated character, best kit, best weapon, best new feature. And I thought it'd be fun to fill this out and explain my reasons in a video. Anyway, first one, let's get into it. Most underrated character of 2025. So 2025 is basically everyone from Mavuika Seat Lali onwards. And honestly, it didn't really take me too long to think of my picks. I kind of cheated here. I basically picked two different characters. But what I've gone for is Flins and Aino. Mostly because those are the two characters that I always praise highly in my videos and on stream. And I know I do get a lot of people saying, oh, they don't think Flins is as good. It's like Nefer. A lot of people don't think she's that great. But I've always rated these two characters highly. So let's get into Aino first. The reason why I think Aino is quite good is I think a lot of people associate her with like the early region 3-4 stars like Kachina, maybe even Dendro main character in Kole, in that they think that Aino is very replaceable. And the thing is, Aino actually has a lot of stuff going on in her kit. The three main things that stand out to me is her C1 giving 80 EM, her C6 giving 35% lunar reaction damage bonus, and the third one, which isn't technically in her kit, but it's just how powerful this event weapon is and how well it synergizes with her. And I think because most people don't really have Aino constellations, is you give your perspective on C0 Aino. So if you're missing two of those things, then you might think that she's not very good. But I think over time, you'll definitely get this C1 and eventually you'll probably get this C6. And these are very strong buffs. And even this C2 here. So one of the things people complain about with Aino is actually circle impact. But first of all, this AoE is not bad. It's quite big. But even if it's still restrictive, which it is, the AoE of that is not the only Hydra application she has. And that's because eventually you'll get her C2. And her C2, this off-field hit here, is not tied to that same circle impact. So that is very nice quality of life. And yeah, like I said, I think this event weapon is so powerful. This is so powerful, it means Aino is very good in Stygian Onslaught. You don't have to worry about battering her at all. So from my perspective, like say for example, we ever get a Nefer rerun and Aino's on the banner. Nefer herself has very strong early constellations. I would fancy like pulling on a Nefer banner, trying to get Aino constellations, and if you get a C1 Nefer, then even better. One of the other characters I said is Flins, and that's because a lot of people say that Nefer does more damage, but I've always thought from my perspective, we kind of got hit with the waifu tax with Nefer, because Lauma Nefer, maybe it's very slightly stronger than Inefer Flins, but Inefer Flins is more complete with the husband of players getting the shield and better AoE. I genuinely think these two duos are a lot closer in damage than people think. I personally went for these two because I like them more design wise. You could very easily have gone for these two and had a lot of success this year. Flins is very powerful. Next one was Spiral Abyss MVP, and I went for a bit of a troll answer here. I just put F1, and that, as you guys probably know, is the book button. This helps you cheat energy, and you can't really use that mechanic in a lot of the newer content like Stygian Onslaught, which I really miss. And yeah, I understand why they don't want booking to be a thing in Stygian Onslaught, especially because you start off with 0 energy. But yeah, for me, the Abyss will always have some sort of booking association. But yeah, I just love doing booking in the Abyss. It's very important if you want to min-max, and yeah, it's just going to be the MVP for me. Most disappointing 5-star of 2025. I didn't have to think too long about this one. There aren't actually that many bad characters released in 2025, but I think this one of the standouts probably is Mizuki. In fact, I still didn't even really level her on my own account, even though I've played her a lot already, especially as they actually gave her some sort of like swirl team synergies going on, even with these early constellations. And even though she's a standard character, there still should have been a universe where if they're making this sort of swirl character, there should have been something more with it. And the fact that just swirl teams just never was a thing at all, and it was just bad, it seems like a wasted opportunity. All these other cores that we've got the past year, we've got Freeze, Electro Charge, Bloom, even if it was weaker, and we could have got some swirl team going on, Aoife being like a budget Mizuki, something like that. There should have been something. Next one, best comeback character of 2025. Now honestly, again, I didn't have to think too long about this, because I think a lot of people probably would say the same thing as me, which is Sucrose. And the reason why Sucrose is the biggest combat character is because a lot of different reaction teams want EM, and whether you think it's a cool thing or a bad thing, the original 1.0 character is kind of still one of the only real EM buffers that we have in the game. I know Sucrose is still never going to be the most popular, at least like usage rate wise, but for tryhard players, you'll be using Sucrose. Like you could use a Sucrose with your Nefer team, Sucrose with your Mulaney team. She's even got like artifact variances now. Not all teams would use VV. For example, in like a Nefer team, it's even like a thing to be using Deepwood Sucrose in these teams. Me personally, I always think it's cool that older characters get used, especially older 4-stars. And on top of that, they're giving out Sucrose for free recently, so very nice. And her constellations don't really make a big difference as well. So very powerful. I've been getting use out of sack frags. I've been getting use out of Wandering Even Star, TTDS as well. A lot of flexibility. Now this one here, I'm kind of cheating, but there's this one here, worst element of 2025. And honestly, I had to protest this one. I've always been of the opinion that tier listing elements is the most useless thing. It doesn't mean anything. I know people are going to say, oh, Geo is bad or whatever. Whenever you think you're tier listing elements, what you're actually doing is just tier listing characters. And when someone says that, oh, Melt is insane or Pyro characters are insane, what they're really doing is they're looking at stuff like Mavuika being strong, or they're saying Melt is good, they're saying that Seat Lali. So honestly, I've never been a fan of saying something's a good element or a bad element. All right, this one here might get me into a bit of trouble. Most overrated character of 2025. This is kind of rage baity, but whatever, we'll answer the question anyway. I went for Shilonen here. Now you might say Shilonen didn't technically release in 2025, but I'm just looking at it from the perspective of the year of 2025. I don't know if that's cheating or not. She's a character that a lot of people would say is one of the best characters in the game, but just looking at my battle records here, I barely even play Shilonen. I used to hear, but this was like a Gene full damage thing. Shilonen is a good support, but the problem has always been that she's like a jack of all trades, master of none. And honestly, I think her kit's kind of emptier than you would think. Her skill does no damage, her burst does no damage as a support, and her healing, you have to use her burst to heal, which is a long animation. As a generic support, she kind of doesn't really do anything aside from this elemental res trade and holding an artifact set. And in a lot of teams, you end up not even using scrolls on her because you got it on someone else, which is fine because she's flexible, so you can end up using something like Archaic Petra or Instructor, whatever. But the point is, I've always felt that she was gonna run into issues when we get more defined archetypes, and that's kind of what ended up happening. If you look at after Shilonen's release, aside from Mavuika, there isn't really that many characters that are released after that you'd actually play Shilonen with. And even with Mavuika, it's very interesting because the main thing she does for Mavuika is that she's good at generating Night Soul, which is very nice. Helps you get Mavuika's burst, especially in Stygian Onslaught. But as it turns out, they barely even let you play Melt teams. So I actually play Mavuika a lot, but I basically always play Overload teams. They really don't give you much opportunity to play Mavuika Melt, which then would heavily affect Shilonen's usage. I'm sure there's people who have played Mavuika Shilonen or Mulani Shilonen, but I haven't personally been playing it that much. And speaking of Mulani, a lot of people are replacing Shilonen now with Mona. So if you're not always playing her with Mavuika or Mulani, it's very easy to run out of use cases. Not trying to be controversial, is just the first character that came to mind for me. I know that she's on the banner right now and a lot of people are probably going to pull for her, but yeah, you might not actually need her that much. Next one is Stygian Onslaught MVP. Now this one, everyone's going to have their own answer, and I think that's how you're supposed to do it. Who's the MVP for you might not be the MVP for me. And the thing with me is that I pretty much ended up playing Skirk Freeze basically every single Stygian. Every Stygian I was playing some form of Skirk Freeze, whether it was with Seat Lali or Shenhe. And honestly, aside from the first boss here, this Cryo Freeze Automaton here, a lot of these other clays have been more like brute forcing. Maybe it's cheating by putting an entire team here rather than one character, but you can't really pick one character because this team doesn't really work without Escoffier or Farina. Just like at this low investment, you're probably not going to get the same results for replacing Skirk. So this trio kind of is one character by itself. And yeah, I'm very interested to see how much longer I can keep brute forcing with my Skirk teams. Another interesting one, best character kit of 2025. So this kind of question for me, it's not really about how strong the character is. When I think of the best kit, I think of like something that's interesting, that opened up a lot of teams, but was also well balanced. And I think characters like Seat, Lali, and Eon-san were well balanced. They are very strong, but they did carve out their own niches, which I liked. But I ended up going for Durin, the most recent character that I pulled. And one of the reasons why I went for it is I never would have thought they would have made an off-field pyro character, but he technically does have his niches. To get his res shred as a sub DPS, only for burning, overloaded, or pyro swell, or pyro geo. So they ended up carving a niche from him, which I was surprised they could even do that. But I actually don't mind it, because then they allow you to play him in more of a DPS role for the reactions that they didn't include here. And I think that was nicely balanced. And on top of that, I do like how Durin, mostly, at least for now, he works with a lot of older teams, which as a veteran player, you're always gonna appreciate. I think he's strong, but not too strong. Two quick ones here, worst weapon of 2025 and best weapon of 2025. For worst weapon, I went for Lauma's signature weapon. And that's because basically no one pulled for it. Maybe only a couple of people pulled for it. And that's because the event weapon here, Aetherlight Spindle Loot, is just so good that even though her weapon is still an upgrade over this, most people didn't really bother. Meta is pretty much just to use this, and if you're going to put a weapon, probably get it on Nefer instead. Best weapon I feel is self-explanatory, but it really, for me, it is Favlance. And Favlance was so impactful. It got to the point, especially in the first Stygian, where a lot of people, including myself, were using 3 Favs, maybe even 4. Eon-san, you're playing Eon-san here, Chevres, Xiangling, Shenhe. Even the most recent one, if you're playing Varessa against the plunge boss, you might be using 2 Favs here. Some people, they might even be using a Fav on a Escoffier. It's just a weapon I consistently use so much. It's just because a lot of polearm characters are very popular, and a lot of polearm characters using Favlance with them is very popular. Best character OST for 2025. I'm going to be honest. To be honest, outside of Skirk's OST, I don't really remember that much from the newer characters. There haven't really been that much memorable ones for me. There's the cringe K-pop Mavuika one. Not a fan of that though. Now this is a good question. Best new feature added in 2025. Now when I was doing this on stream, I think so many of the chat said a similar answer, which is the artifact improvement where you can see the 4th substat. It's crazy how good of an update this is. You would have known that this substat here would have been crit. I would like to see this in Star Rail as well, but this was such a good update, especially when you're strong boxing pieces and then you see you have the crit straight away. Maybe there was another quality of life that was better than this, but this is what I thought of. You can let me know in the comments if you thought of something that you think's a nice update. But yeah, for me and a lot of people in chat, we instantly thought of this one. Now I guess this is another rage baity question. Worst character kit of 2025. Now again, similar to the best character kit, it's not really about strength, how I see this question. For me, like the worst kit, it could be a kit that's disappointing, but it also could just be a kit that I don't think was well balanced or well designed. And I think a lot of people had a similar answer. So I put 2. I put Mavuika and Jahoda. For Mavuika, why I think she's the worst kit is I think her sub DPS role, when you play her in that kind of role, that is well balanced. And it's well balanced because a lot of people are just replacing her with Durin nowadays. And there's even been like Molali teams where you could play Pyro Traveler or Xiangling instead. Her damage when played as sub DPS was pretty well balanced. It was strong, but it wasn't that strong. And her Pyro app was good, but not that good. The issue with Mavuika is the obvious issue, which is her on-field role, which just does too much damage. To be fair, all the combos that were coming up with these days, maybe they couldn't have foreseen that, but yeah, something went wrong with this as an on-field DPS. The thing is, there's layers to it. It's not just how strong she is as a DPS, but she's also very flexible. Like, you can play loads of different overload teams, melt teams. Compared to most of the other newer characters, she actually has flexibility as a DPS. And on top of that, she works well as a hyper carry, where she has an insane weapon, so this is a massive damage increase in her teams, and she has insane constellations, which are also massive damage increases. So at basically every investment level, you can just keep investing into your Mavuika and the damage will just get stronger and stronger. The scaling is way too high. Now conversely, I've also put Jahoda, and even though I've been having fun playing with Jahoda in my Nefer team, that's partly because I got her at C6, which I don't think many people would have done. Crazy RNG, C6 Jahoda whilst only having a C0 Durin. But yeah, the reason why she's the worst character kit is more that she's a disappointing kit, and that's pretty much because of one thing, which is having to fill her flask with Hydro element in order to get this crit thing here. Every player who's played Jahoda and Nefer knows the pain of this, and this is a clear oversight. It is possible to play around this, but it's never going to be that consistent. So what it is say for example, to get her buffs, you have to run around for ages, fill up her flask, and there you get the buffs like that. But the problem is it takes so long, and on like in consecutive rotations, because enemies will have Dendro on them, not Hydro, you might not even be getting it that quickly. Like for example here, let's say if I do that, so I'm applying Hydro, but how many enemies actually have Hydro on them now? So she's just running around for ages trying to get her buffs up. And the thing is they designed Jahoda as a healer for Nodcry teams, and Nefer is a Nodcry character that has been missing healers, so people had been expecting them to release a healer for Nefer teams. On top of that, there's the Nefer Jahoda lore synergy, and on top of that, they actually wanted to make her a good character. They don't give all 4 stars good kits, but this one, where they give them some buffs, like she gets an EM buff here, and they give them a good C6. A lot of the time it gives crit, like Jahoda, Kutosara, Goro. So they wanted Jahoda to be good, and there was clear real estate for this team. The problem is, I don't know why they didn't realize that she's going to have issues actually filling up her flask in Bloom teams. They really should just consider this a bug and fix it. They need to do something. It's to the point where even though Jahoda is still good with Nefer, she takes long enough and she's clunky enough to where you could still viably play Nahida or Sucrose, and you maybe even get faster clears, to be completely honest. And that's comparing characters with very little synergy, old characters, to a newer character specifically designed for this, and you get the C6. So this is a terrible designing by the design team. I don't know what they were thinking. Such a small fix and she would have been so good for Nefer and even Flins teams. It's just a huge oversight, very disappointing. Most anticipated character, this is a personal preference. I think most people would probably say either Colombina or Alice, something like that. I went for Alice. These kind of characters who have been in the lore and have been in the story and teased for years. 4-star character MVP. So this is another one of those questions where I just like to look up my Stygian results. And one thing I noticed is there are a lot of 4-stars who I use consistently. One of the most consistent ones is Chevreuse. I use overload teams in almost all Stygian, whether it's with Raiden or Mavuika, Overrated teams, surprisingly even more than Bennett. I know a lot of people might not like it when there are strong 4-stars with strong constellations and it's not guaranteed. I'm sure this is the same situation for a lot of you guys. You're playing Chevreuse in your teams as well. I like it that the Chevreuse core is still going strong, and there's still a lot of teams that are using overload. Technically with Skirk teams, Flins teams, Nefer teams, we didn't really get it, but with Durin we got more Chevreuse. And the final question, character of the year. So this last question here, I didn't want to see this from a gameplay perspective. I wanted to see it from just the community perspective, and yeah, I picked Jahoda. I don't know what kind of psycho you would have to be playing the story and not liking Jahoda. I think pretty much everyone found Jahoda to be one of the most fun new characters. To be fair, one thing I'll say is pretty much all of the Nodcry characters are really cool. I like Nefer and Aino as well. I know a lot of people do. Natlan was a bit controversial for some people, hit or miss, but it's very nice that the game came back well with Nodcry, where almost all the characters pretty universally liked, but Jahoda definitely the surprising star. So yeah, that's my bingo done. If you guys want to check out the original post, maybe you want to do your own and share it, you can get it from Bite Size's tweet. I'll be reading your guys' opinions. Maybe you agree or disagree with some of these. And yeah, that was my 2025 roundup. Happy New Year, guys. See you with some more videos soon.